Welcome to the Power Bank Challenge, and today we're going to skip the challenge. We're going to discuss using heaters with the power banks. So stick around further into the video and I'll show you some alternative ways that you can use your power bank to generate some heat. So I've had a few questions on the oil radiant heaters, and I wanted to discuss that in particular in this video, and I'll probably have another video tomorrow where I'll actually do a demonstration with the radiant heater. But today's question was, can I run this on the Bluetti? And technically you can. This has a low setting of 600 watts. This is the smallest of the Bluettis. It's the EB3A. And down here it has the specs. It's 268 watt hours and it's also 600 watts. So I'm going to relate it to like a car where you have your speed, so your max speed, and then you also have your fuel tank. So the max speed, you can do 100 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour, 120, somewhere in there. This has 600 watts. So the most this can output is 600 watts. So anything that I want to plug into it needs to be less than 600 watts. So that's like 100 miles an hour in your car. So the 600 watts, if anything is over it, you really can't run it. There's a setting you can change in here, but I don't really want to get into that. The 268 watt hours is like your gas in your fuel tank. How far can you go? So this again is one of their smallest ones, or it is their smallest one, 268 watt hours. So I can use 268 watts for 1 hour. That's kind of like miles per gallon. So on the lowest setting, this is 600 watts. This is 600 watts output. So I can run this on here, but I can only run it for 268 watt hours, which is less than a half an hour. So at that point, this is just barely going to get warm enough to do anything. So it's really not worth it. The same way with any other heater, really. The heaters draw a lot of power, and they're not really meant to run off of these power banks. The setting in here would let you do it. The setting that you can change in here would let you run a 1200 watt item, which is what this is. It's 1100 watts on medium. But then I could only run it for, I had to figure out the math, but 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So if it's an emergency, you need to do it, you can, but in 10 to 15 minutes, this really isn't going to change the temperature in the room by very much. So I really don't recommend running any heaters off of these power banks. This other power bank that I have, it's a bigger unit. It's about 4 times this size. But again, this one has 1100 watt hours. So on medium, this uses 1100 watts per hour. 1100 watts times 1 hour, so it's 1100 watts per hour. So I could run this on medium on this larger bank for 1 hour. But at the cost of this large bank, especially compared to this bank, it's not worth it to only get 1 hour. So I just don't use heaters on portable power banks. Now my trailer, which is what we're in, is a lot bigger than either one of these two. And I could run this on high in my trailer for probably about 8 hours. Again, that's not my preferred method. I have an air conditioning unit that has a reverse heat pump on it. So that's a lot more efficient. And we run that all the time and get heat that way. So it's a lot better option versus using an electric heater. So now let's talk about some of the other ways that you can use this to generate some heat. So probably our favorite way to use this to generate heat, and we do have a video of this, and I'll share the link up here. But this is a heating pad, and we've used heating blankets in the trailers before. They still end up using a lot of power. I think it was like 120 watts per heating pad. per hour, so 120 watts. And then if you were to run it for 8 hours, that ended up being quite a bit. So this is a cat heating pad, an animal heating pad. I think this one's 18 by 18. I'll put a link in the description below. But this is, I wrote some notes down. This is about 32 watts while it's running. Once it gets up to temperature, it'll cycle on and off, so it actually uses less. So in my other video that I have for this one, I showed on a low setting that I end up getting about 50 watts that I use, 50 watt hours. And a high setting, I use about 130 watt hours. So this has 268 watt hours available. So at 130, I would use about half of it. But just because I leave this on for 8 hours at night, that's going to consume almost the other half. So about 100 to 130 watt hours for 8 hours. So I would be able to use this to power one heat pad on high. I could probably use this to power 2 heat pads on low. So if you're thinking of your wife or spouse or child, and you had 2, you could power the heating pad, 2 of them on low with this for 8 hours. So if you were cold at night and wanted a way to heat, the oil heater or any other heater, for a matter of fact, isn't really going to work very well. But this heating pad, my wife and I have gone out in 30 and 40 degree temperatures in our trailer. Put this at our feet, under some blankets in our bed, and we sleep fine in 30 and 40 degree temperatures. It's nice breathing in cold air, so it's a good way to sleep. But this really keeps us warm. The heating pad would be safe enough to sleep at night and leave that on. These other methods, I would not suggest leaving them on while you're sleeping. But if you're at sitting by the campfire and you're cold and you don't want to get closer to the fire, or just at a party and there's no fire, just sitting on some lawn chairs and you want some extra heat, you have this in your car. You could go grab a light bulb. So this is a 40 watt equivalent. It uses 5.5 watts. And I also did a video on these light bulbs too. I'll put that up above. But this uses 5.5 watts. When you screw it in and you turn it on, it actually gets hot down in this area. And I just measured this. So it gets about 100 degrees in this area, the 40 watt equivalent, or 5.5 watts. So with gloves on, or even without gloves on, you could hang on to this and it would actually allow you to warm up a little bit. On here it shows we're using 8 watts. And it says it would run for 23 hours, 23.6 hours. So it'll actually be less than that, but I can feel it getting warm already. So it doesn't take long to warm up. But having directed heat versus having the heater that's heating the room, direct heat on my hands, it's going to use low power, and I'll be able to run a lot longer on the Bluetti. So if you were to have a 60 watt light bulb, which is 9 watts, it actually got 130 degrees. And the way I measured it was without me hanging on to it. So if I was actually hanging on to it, it probably would get hotter. So if you were to tuck this underneath your blanket in your bed, it might get too hot and you might not want to do that. So again, I suggest don't leave these other alternative methods on while you're sleeping. But if you're sitting at a table outside, you need some extra heat, got a light bulb, you got gloves on, stick it on the table, put it between your legs, it'll warm you up. And this one only draws a little bit more than the 40 watt. So again, it would last several hours. Another method, which I've done quite a few videos on this, So this is a crock pot, and with a pot on the inside, the lid on it, you could put in some soup. And while it's cooking, so it uses 50 watts, while it's cooking, you could set this in your lap, set it on a table, and just hold it while it's cooking. So again, if you were outside at night and it was a little chilly out, you could put some apple cider in here and have warm apple cider. You could put some tea in it, some soup, but there's heat generated from almost anything that's consuming electricity. So anything that's on using power, you can probably hang on to it, put it in your pocket, do something with it, and you can get some heat from it. So this actually gets pretty warm on the outside, and it takes about an hour to warm up, say, a can of soup. So if you were hungry at night while you're outside by the fire, you warm up some soup, you could hang on to it while it's warming up, you could keep warm. When they put the fire out, you go back to bed, turn your cat pad on, and you probably get most of the night. So if this only lasted for 1 hour, you ran the cat pad on low, you could get one full night, 8 hours on the cat pad, and be warm all night long. Which we do that in the trailer all the time, but maybe you're in a tent. So you could use the cat pad in the tent. You can use this for dinner before you go to bed and warm up. Another way to generate some heat, and I did another video on this. You look up here. This is a baby bottle warmer. This actually uses 300 watts of power, but it can warm up a baby bottle in about 2 minutes. And in the other video that I did, I showed I warmed up a can of soup. And what I did was I filled this up several times, and I just kept dumping it in here. Once you got up to 4 or 5 cycles, it wasn't really getting it any warmer. But I think after 2 cycles, you could probably get this bottle of water between 130 and 150 degrees. So in 4 minutes of running this 300 watt item, I could get this to 130 to 150 degrees, and I could put it inside my coat, under my armpit, between my leg, somewhere. I could sleep with this. I'm not going to worry about this starting a fire. But a bottle of water doesn't quite fit into this ring. This ring just helps seal around your baby bottle, just to help let it heat up quicker. But you can force that on there. If you had to, open that up a little bit, let a little bit of air and water out of it. You can get it on the bottle. But I could put that in there, dump in some liquid, run 2 cycles, 4 minutes total. And about 1 cycle drew this down almost 10%. So 2 cycles will draw this down 20%. So that's about 50 watts. So that's the same as using this for 1 hour or using the cat pad for 8 hours on low. So I could use the cat pad for 2 cat pads on low, or I could run this for 4 minutes and then run the cat pad for the rest of the night. And I should be able to run that on here. So several ways that you can get extra heat from this. And I have one more. I'm sure there's other ways, but this one is actually a rechargeable flashlight. So when I recharge it, and we were using this for candling some eggs, and this actually gets really hot. So I just measured it. I'm not fully recharged, but I was getting 90 degrees on here, and I could just leave this in my pocket, turn it on, and it would get warm. I got a couple other ones that actually have heavy rings that go around them, which are basically heat sinks, so they don't get too hot. So being a heat sink means it gets hot. So you can use that as a heat source. One of the things that I want to share here was that one actually has batteries in it. They're the AA or AAA batteries, so depending on the flashlight you get, but mine's the 3 AAAs. So what I can do, and I have another video for that here, I can charge those rechargeable batteries on here. I can put them in here. Then I could turn this on and use it as heat. But the light doesn't get that hot in this one. But if you got a really bright one, it might. So you could use this as a heat source for your hand. And then as the batteries go dead, you can just swap out another set of 3 batteries. And then the next day, you can charge that on here. So with the solar panels outside, say I used the heating pad, I used this, and I could also have the flashlight. As those batteries drain, the light gets dimmer and it won't be as warm. So if you want warmer flashlight, put in fresh batteries and then you'll get a warmer flashlight. But the point is, don't use the Energizers and the Duracells because you're spending a lot of money just to get you half hour or 1 hour's worth of heat. But you can use the rechargeable batteries that I have in the video. I think they have like 2,000 recharge cycles. So if I went and used 2 sets of batteries each night, I could still get a year's worth of, well, more than a year's worth of getting free heat sources. And that's not using anything from here until I charge it, which would be the next day when the sun's out. I could use the solar panels. So if I drain this by using this and the cat pad, and I use this for extra heat, and the next day, next morning when you wake up, this isn't charged anymore, I could then plug in the solar panels, charge these batteries while it's charging this in the morning throughout the day, and I'd be all set for the next night. So the basic point is anything that consumes electricity is going to give off some heat. And using a power bank, you need to really think outside of the box and try to direct that heat to something that's smaller, something that's more direct. Where a heater is going to be heating an entire room, you need to think about how can I heat just myself. So the cat pads under a blanket, we slept outside in the trailer in 30 degrees. So as long as you keep your core warm, you can sleep when it's pretty cold out. So if you like videos like this, subscribe to our channel up here and watch more videos down here. Have a good day.